Hello people, allow me to take a seat here for a moment and spend some time with my favorite YouTubers, the trolls and everybody in between. I've taken my notes here, my cell phone, and of course, my Fanta for those moments where I can't stand the comments you're about to make on this video. So guys, welcome back to another video for exotic car hacks. And today, I'm not gonna actually read my notes or anything. I had some bullet points here, you see, to make for you. We're gonna talk a little bit about how to actually become an exotic car investor. Now, on the surface of things, you may have heard me time and time again talk about the power of putting money into exotic cars. Now, many of you have always argued and continue to argue that cars depreciate. And while it's very, very true, cars do depreciate for the most part, not all cars depreciate. Now, you've also argued that exotics are expensive to maintain, and that is also a very valid point. The average oil change at a dealership is actually over $1,000. And the average repair on an exotic is actually over $3,000. So theoretically, you would also be considered very, very correct if it came down to the conventional thinking of how exotic cars worked. You've also argued that insurance can be quite expensive. And again, another incredible point, with some insurance company charging upwards of $4,000 to $5,000 a year to actually insure your exotic. So where is the difference between what you're saying and what I'm saying? Because there seems to be a significant difference between all of these things and some of the things I'm preaching here at Exotic Car Hacks. Now, if you've already taken my training and have already understood all the ins and outs of the exotic car market and some of the things I teach, you're probably going to want to skip this video. There's much better videos on my YouTube channel that can help you. For those of you that have not, I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about what it really takes to become an exotic car investor and how to change your mindset from the conventional thinking of a consumer to the thinking of a modern day exotic car investor. So let's address the three basic points that most of you don't seem to understand, especially those of you that are watching this that are fairly poor, sitting at home without actual access to an exotic, but seem to believe you're keyword warriors because you're always typing, thinking you understand cars just by watching other YouTubers talk about them. So today, perhaps you're going to learn something new. The first stage is that depreciation, while very, very true on most cars, most ordinary luxury and even exotic cars depreciate from the stage that they're new all the way to what we call the end of their life cycle. Now, for the majority of exotics, that life cycle is about 10 years. But on a regular car, the life cycle is about 7 years. Now, here's the big difference. A normal car like a Honda Accord, a Nissan Maxima, or even a Mercedes C-Class will depreciate all the way to what you consider a zero baseline, meaning at some point in its life, its mileage will highly overexceed its use and it will become worth absolutely nothing. It'll be worth what one of those billboard ads on the highways saying if it drives, it's worth $3,500. Now, that's for a normal car. An exotic car, on the other hand, has a couple of different touches. Some exotics do depreciate, and most exotics depreciate from the time they're brand new. The difference, however, lies in the new thinking of the exotic car investor, understanding where the depreciation ends on certain models and when does it start to appreciate based on the fact that there's less units on the market, it has better mileage than most units on the market, and it actually plays a game of supply and demand and no longer a game of time depreciation. So, what does this all mean? That means that if you buy a normal exotic, such as, let's say you walk in and buy a Ferrari 458, brand new from the showroom floor, you will absolutely lose money. And that is not what we call becoming an exotic car investor. However, on the other hand, if you buy a Nissan Maxima, you're going to lose a lot of money once more, in the same exact proportion of a 300K car to a 20K car. The difference, however, lies that if you buy the right 458 Spider, for example, after it's been driven for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it is going to appear at a different scale of depreciation. And at a point in its life, which for the 458 will be in its 6th-year cycle, it will actually have gone down to $1 below what the actual depreciated time schedule is, meaning it will no longer depreciate based on time and will only depreciate based on miles and based on condition. So, depreciation can be beat should you know the right car to buy and should you understand that it's at the right time to actually buy that car. Then comes all these ideas of options and special, pristine condition, mileage and everything, which then drives what you consider the collector market and the investor market. Two, let's talk about conventional repairs. Conventional thinkers will go to dealerships for their repairs because in their way of thinking, dealers are the only ones qualified to repair your car. They must be the only ones with the tools. These are complicated cars. Do you realize that we are in 2019, and in 2019 you actually have the opportunity to take your car to thousands of shops across the US, thousands, who specialize in exotic cars? They actually have the same tools the dealer has, and technicians that are actually even better than the dealer because they specialize specifically on certain models and have dealt with thousands and thousands of repairs in manners where they've understood the hacks and they've understood the way to fix things without often spending as much money as the dealership. Even better, they even have their own way to source the exact same parts from the dealership at a fraction of the cost. That is what has happened since the globalization of the car market. Meaning today, for example, Volkswagen owns both of the cars behind me, the Performante and the Porsche. Meaning that a lot of the parts used on these cars are universally used across the board. Both of the cars behind me have brake systems engineered by Brembo, not by manufacturers, but by a third party who's then commissioned. Therefore, you could go to the factory and buy the brake pads for roughly $2,000 to $3,000. Or you could go buy them at Brembo for roughly $1,500. Or you could find them at third-party shop for even 50% of that. And so theoretically, what would be a $3,000 to $4,000 repair at the dealership now ends up being nothing more than a $700 repair at an independent shop. And now, while exotics do break down, I can absolutely attest to that, they certainly break down a lot less than some of these older exotics that we're used to. What does it all mean? Well, older exotics, as you see, were very limited in production and were not globalized in parts. You see, the car behind me, the Performante, actually runs mainly Audi parts in it. If you take away most of its components in terms of the outside and its design, you'll notice that most of its engine components, suspension components, and chassis components all have Audi part numbers. So why is that? Well, because Audi, in order to actually make money, uses the same shocks in this car that it does in the Audi R8, giving him the more ability to actually create more shock parts and not be so specific part for part and car for car, giving ultimately Audi the ability to make more money. But this works out in our favors as consumers too, even as investors. As consumers, it allows us to drive these cars without actually worrying about one basic component, the fact that the shock was only used on 1,000 cars. Instead, the same shock is used on 10,000, 20,000 cars, giving them a lot more data and making it a lot easier to replace. So therefore, repairs are actually a lot cheaper and breakdowns happen a lot less. For the last probably 7 years, I've probably only ran my car to the dealership one time for a warranty repair. And even if that repair was out of warranty, it would have only cost me $700. And so the reality is that exotic cars do cost money to fix, but they rarely break down, especially modern ones. In addition to that, now I don't know about old ones, but modern ones rarely break down. In addition to that, repairs outside of conventional thinking don't have to be that expensive. As an investor in exotic cars, you cannot think the conventional way. There is no way you can actually take your car to the dealership and pay thousands of dollars only to be met with the idea that you're going to make money on a car. It's impossible. It's like if you're investing in a house. Let's say you're investing to fixer-upper a little house for your little real estate wholesaling business. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to a contractor you found on Google and say, I'm going to pay you full price to come fix this house? You're never going to make any money. Instead, you have to find ways to hack your way to repairs. One of the things we cover in my course on how to become an exotic car investor, not an actual car consumer, is actually a list of resourceful sites, thousands across the United States, Canada, and the UK, that enable people to get repairs at qualified shop by specialists for a fraction of what it typically costs. The same places I'm using, my resources are open to you. And finally, let's talk about insurance. Conventionally, insurance has been known to be more expensive for higher-end cars than lower-end cars. And in theory, that would sound pretty logical. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, times have changed, and that information, unfortunately, is no longer accurate. It's not accurate because insurance companies today use 3 basic criteria to determine if a car is expensive to insure or not. The accident rate in general, you as the particular driver, and ultimately the cost of the average repair across the country. So certain cars are certainly more expensive than others. But did you know that both cars behind me are technically cheaper to insure than a Mercedes S-Class? Significantly cheaper too. My insurance in the state of Florida, which is one of the highest states to insure an actual car in, is $700 for 6 months in the GT3 RS and $900 for 6 months in the Performante. The Performante having a sticker of $375,000 and the GT3 RS $230,000. And yet, insurance is still cheaper than it is for a daily driven BMW 3 Series. Now, why? Well, because there are tricks to getting your insurance down, and conventional thinkers will simply call their insurance companies and say, hey, I need a rate, what is it? And they'll get it. But exotic car investors understand that these cars are not going to be driven all day, every day to school back and forth. And using a lot of the tricks and tips in my course that's located in the link in this video, you actually learn the strategies to use when communicating with your insurance company to get the proper rates. And more importantly, which insurance companies to call that would actually support you being an exotic car investor. And so this pretty much sums up this YouTube video. I wanted to share the basic 3 myths and the differences between being an investor, a conventional thinking consumer, and the big differences that have changed across the years for the exotic car market. Now, if you've ever been interested in investing in exotic cars, regardless that you want to use your money or lending from a bank to do so, I urge you to take my course so you can actually learn how to actually become an investor in this field. Now, it is important to become an investor because this is the funnest investment you'll ever make. Not only you get to enjoy your investment and not just look at it go up and down like stocks, but you actually get to, in some cases, make money, and in other times, just park money safely into an exotic without actually worrying about a loss. And hey, listen, to be clear, my course costs money, and our community now has over 3,000 exotic car hackers, which is fantastic for me. And for some of you that are not taking advantage of it, it's unfortunate. So listen, click the link in this video and watch my free training where I'm going to teach you at least the basics you need to learn. At least you'll get some value. And if you want to join our exotic car hacks course, great. If you don't, no big deal. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, at least you understand that anyone can technically own an exotic car as long as they understand the basic principles that depreciation, insurance, and repairs don't have to cost that much, especially when you're using the exotic car hacks way. So if you've ever wanted to become an investor, click the link, take the training. Otherwise, hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you next time on my next exotic car hacks video.